All right, Dan is the man.
What's up, Tony? How you doing?
Good. How about you? Did you like that new intro?
Yeah,
That's
that's
that's the
definitely something.
that's the that's the first. You're the first podcast that has the new intro. That's from my son Alex. And anyway, I just wanted to try it out and see how it would go. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Before we move off of that intro, I want to tell you that there is kind of a backstory to that picture that you showed. Um, One of my buddies on Twitter, Grant Lovick, I can
Oh, I've
never
had
remember
him on
his
the
last name.
show. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
been on the
great
show.
dude.
Yeah.
He was the one that made that, and he put it out there before I went up to DC. So the plan was to recreate that photo when I got there. I went and got a blue shirt. I got an American flag to put on it. I got a hat that looked close to it. I actually brought my 13-year-old daughter with me to Washington to go to the congressional hearings, but it got so hot and there was so much walking that we both got exhausted and weren't able to recreate the picture like I had intended to. So mission failed.
Well, that's what green screens are for, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever. That was also that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Was, as you can see, the subtitle was Our Man in DC. Weren't you the only notable? Uh, okay, so I was going to say TikToker, but you're a YouTuber and an Xer. What do we call people on X?
I don't know anymore.
Exerciser. But weren't you? Were how many? Were there any other content providers there besides the you know uh,
Yeah, there were like for this. So I've gone. This is my second one that I've gone to. I went to the Senate congressional hearing when it was Kirkpatrick, and it was me. Alien scientists was there, and I think that's primarily all the content creators that were there. But man, this last one with the House Oversight Committee, there was a ton of people there. There's a ton of podcasters. Chris Lato was there. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp were there, of course. Christopher King was there. Martin Willis, I got to meet him from podcast UFO. I'm trying to think of some other folks, but there was a whole mob of people for this one, not unlike the previous one where it was slim pickings and empty seats in the hearing itself. This one was a packed house, probably 300 plus people that didn't get to go into it would be my guess is the attendance.
yeah, it seemed like people had higher expectations for that particular hearing. I don't mean higher. I just meant more than previous, or maybe it seemed maybe
There was
the buzz was
enthusiasm was high like that. I
yeah.
think that was the big difference. Everybody was excited because we were getting witnesses and whistleblowers instead of bureaucrats for the first time. I think that was the key difference between them.
I just want to know why you weren't sitting between Corbell and Knapp up there. That's what I want to
I
know.
was I was trying to grease their palms to get them to let me in because they got priority seating and I did not make it in. So yeah, it
Did
didn't
they
work out. But
were they donating to someone's campaign fund, or what's the deal? I know Tim Burchett probably doesn't take bribes.
yeah, my understanding is they did help coordinate the whole thing. So
Huh.
witnesses, because I mean they're affiliated with Dave Fravor from a long time ago. They're affiliated with David Grusch as well. I don't know how closely they're tied to Ryan Graves, but I think they kind of coordinated the witness list more so than anyone else. So I think that's why they got in there. But that there were two guests in the meeting or in the hearing that weren't highlighted that I think were the most important people, and that's going to be Chuck. Dang it, I can't remember his name. The former ICIG that represents David
Kirkpatrick.
Gresham, not Kirkpatrick. It's Chuck McCullough. I think
Oh,
he's the
that's
former Intelligence Community Inspector General, and he represents David Grush. So he was sitting directly behind him and kind of giving him legal guidance on what he could and couldn't say. So I think he was important. And Tim Gallaudet was also there, who's the former head of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. He, in my opinion, is going to be the next hopefully big contributor to the conversation, but hopefully it's going to focus more on the USO aspect of the phenomenon more so than the aerial stuff.
Which is a very fascinating, I think, to think of the ability that some people describe these objects to be able to travel through water, under the. I guess that's the objects you're talking about, right?
Correct. Unidentified submerged objects, but
Submerged.
he refers to them as UUPs, which is unidentified undersea phenomena. But they're also sometimes referred to. There was a Senate amendment to the NDAA for 2023 that called them UAPs, but it was unidentified aerial undersea phenomena. It was hyphenated, so it should be UAUP in my opinion, but they hyphenated it to stick with UAP.
Huh. I was wanting to talk about Grusch a little bit. I don't know. First of all, I want to preface this by saying I think Grusch is a great guy. I think he's a patriot. He's done great work for his country. But I wonder, and it kind of goes back to the big question that I have about this whole thing is, the coordination effort and why. I mean, I know there are reasons that he came forward, but it seems I just wonder why we don't have more whistleblowers that are immediate witnesses to to craft or bodies or whatever they're talking about. It seems like we're getting some secondhand information.
I
But
would
maybe
completely agree with you. I
maybe
do
I just
feel
don't. I want to say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to say that I'm not saying I don't think he's a valuable witness. I'm just saying it goes to this idea that people are, I had a little debate with a fellow just the other day about, oh, well, if he's not telling the truth, he's going to be perjuring himself. Well, he's only testifying to something someone told him that someone told him, right?
correct.
Even if he's wrong, that just means the guy who told him. I guess how can you can't really be wrong in that situation, you know.
So one of the angles that I take when I view Grush is he is a guy that has gotten so much tacit knowledge from these 40 people that he interviewed over the 40 years that it has met his level of expectation to be willing to step in front of a congressional hearing, raise his right hand, and swear that he's telling the truth. And what I hope for is that the people that he has worked with over those years, his mentors, the people that believe in him, are not going to let him stand alone and take the bullets all by himself the way that he is currently doing it. I'm hoping that what happens is that the initiative that he's taken is going to be followed up by people stepping forward that did have the firsthand information and vouching for the things and verifying the things that he said. And that he's just the guy that's bold enough to take that first step. But I'm really hoping that people don't want to leave him hanging out to dry and that they will step up and back him up. That's what I'm looking for.
That would be awesome. I just wonder. It would anyway. It's kind of a silly debate, that I had with these guys. But I think Alexei and I were talking about this just last night. Who, by the way, Alexei Novitsky might join us for the sake of the audience information. I had mentioned that it's important for us to be able to just ask questions, and I know that on Twitter, UFO Twitter, sometimes when I'll say something, it comes across as either negative or it's made to be negative or it's made to be too skeptical, when really all I'm trying to do is ask questions, right? And it seems like he has been the first one that I have really gotten like vitriol from asking questions about, right? Like I've asked questions about Fravor before, Graves, whoever, Elizondo. I sat and said, no, I don't think we've had true disclosure to Lou Elizondo, and he didn't. It just rolled. You know, it didn't bother him a bit. I actually emailed him later about it, and he was like, "No, I welcome, uh, you know, debate, which is the way it should be." I'm trying to turn my phone off.
Well, I also
And
feel like Lou Elizondo has definitely been an advocate for asking questions. He has said, "Don't believe me, ask me questions, put me to the test. The truth is the truth; it'll come out."
yeah,
So it is frustrating when people get mad at asking questions. Of course, there are people in this community that ask questions that are leading or coming from a not good place. I'll say they're not a genuine question. They're looking to poke people more or less. But
that's an excellent point, because especially when you go to the, like, I personally would have never asked questions about his mental health. Right, that's just a kind of a boundary I don't cross professionally. Right,
yeah,
I give someone that privacy. I think that's a privacy issue. So you're correct. I would have never asked. Well, because I think Colt Hart didn't he actually asked the question in one of his interviews, and about mental health, right? And then
he did, but it wasn't aired. It was kind of, I guess, cut out of the first interview,
oh
that 1 hour ish interview. But then he released that segment of it after the Intercept article came out.
yeah, that's, I was just bringing that as an example of something I probably wouldn't have done, and I don't know who was responsible for cutting it. Maybe Ross was, but uh, now some people would say those are fair questions because he's put himself in the public. But I
I
just,
struggle with that, and because of HIPAA, like that is one thing
yeah,
to me. I'm like, man, you shouldn't be talking about that. I've made the mistake of making a comment on Twitter one time that could be construed as pointing out a medical condition, and I got beat up for it. I apologized. I deleted it, and so I try to learn from that. But I feel
but
like what's happened to Grush is totally different than making a making a guess about somebody's mental.
but it's kind of like what you were talking, what you were saying earlier though about who is asking the question. So if I saw you ask a question, I know you have a good heart, right? I know that you're coming from a good place. You know, it's obvious that the author of the story was not coming from a good place, right? And it's
Right.
funny how that works, right? Because I wouldn't have thought twice. I didn't see your question, and I didn't, so, but if I had seen, if you had asked a question, I wouldn't have thought anything about it, right? It's funny how that works. I think it's funny how when you know someone and you know they're a good person and you know they have good intentions, they can go right up to that edge, you know, and you kind of trust them that they won't go too far with it.
Yeah, and I did it unintentionally. I just kind of flubbed on the delivery of what I stated, more or less. So yeah,
Do you
it
mind me
wasn't something.
asking? Is it something you don't
It
want to talk about?
I'll just kind of briefly touch on it, but it's basically when they were discussing Eric Davis's inability to lie, and I will tell you that, like, I was like, well, I mean, that is a characteristic of this particular uh, type of condition that some people have, and that is me making an assumption on something that someone might have. And so that was where I felt like I did cross the line by assuming somebody has this particular
His
characteristic like that.
inability to lie. I would
That's
think,
what has been discussed. Like Lou Elizondo has even said, like, that guy can't lie. That guy has the inability to lie if you know him.
right. I mean, I think all humans have the ability to lie. Maybe they lean towards that spectrum or something. But I mean,
That's
we all.
exactly what I said. And I was like, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said it. But I said that might be
Well,
part of what it is, because he's just overly truthful
but that
is basically what I
I
was
don't even
implying.
see that as offensive, honestly. You
I
know,
don't see it. I see it
I
as a
don't.
positive. I'm sorry about it. And I'm a perpetual optimist. So I'm always going to look for the bright side of things. So that might be
Yeah,
part of my characteristic. And I'm also going to tell the truth all the time. I'm a rule follower. I don't like to break rules. If there's someone that does not have the ability to tell a lie and is always truthful, I don't see that as a negative. I see that as a honest human being is where I come from when I say something like that.
Well, I mean, there's the, I mean, it's such a broad thing. You know, there's such a broad spectrum of lying, right? I mean, is telling a small little fib a lie? You know, like if you're when your wife asks you, "How do I look today?" You look great, honey. You know,
I have this talk with my
you know.
kids every now and then. Like, you can't hurt your friend's feelings. Sometimes you
Yeah.
got to just go along
So,
with it.
but I think that's in a totally different ballpark than, you know, bringing up the fact that someone was placed in an institution temporarily or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
that's just a whole nother, that has a whole nother taboo associated with it. And socially, you know, people have lost their whole careers over that kind of thing. And it's
But I
just
do
not,
feel
it's not
like
fair.
it makes him more relatable, because
Yeah.
there's so many people that do have problems at some point in their life, and for someone to never have an issue, to be spotless, is the anomaly. Everybody has something, a skeleton in their closet, and I feel like that was his, and it got brought forward in a very um, a, attacking way. I don't know a better word to use to
Yeah.
describe it. It's a hit piece is the best way.
Yeah, hit piece. Yeah, and I know so many people, so many vets that I could probably name 10 of my friends that have served and have suffered from PTSD. My own brother suffered. He left the military like 82 or 83. He went in right out of high school, and he left his. He didn't even finish high school. He got his GED in the army, and when he got out, he was just a different person. And I'm not even, he wouldn't even tell me what happened or where he said he wasn't allowed to talk about the operations he was involved with. And he was such a, I don't mean to say it messed him up so bad, but he actually got into contracting, you know, and he got involved with the wrong people, you know, I mean, the wrong kind of contracting unknowingly. So what happens is some of these people will hire like a contractor, and that contractor will go get his crew. The crew won't know what's happening. The guy who's leading the contractors know. The first thing you know, you're sailing a yacht to Miami that's got drugs on it, and you have no idea. You know, and you're armed with uh, AR-15s or whatever. You're guarding the ship. Anyway, that's a long story, but I'm just saying he went through an experience with that time in prison, and then he had his PTSDs. I mean, so you see, there's a whole gambit. There's a whole people. I don't think people understand the lives that vets go through after they leave the service. You know, whether they're still contracting or whether they're becoming police officers, or you know what I mean. And so most people take all that for granted, and they don't give that person any credit at all for what they've been through. And that's kind of, I didn't mean to go into a long story. I just meant that's kind of my background of why I don't really cross that line with people, you know.
So what the ideal scenario, in my opinion, that hopefully plays out going forward, is that the way that David Grusch responds to this situation, with this information being blasted across the news channels, is that he'll respond in a way similar to NBA superstar Kevin Love did. He had basically a panic attack, mental health issues during a season, and he ended up basically having to withdraw from his team and the NBA for a while. But then he came back, and he has kind of been an advocate for mental health for other people that are going through similar things. And other NBA players have jumped on board and said, I have this occasionally occur to me as well. And so now he's created a fund called the Love Fund, or the Love Organization. And he helps people that are going through mental health crises and panic attacks and things like this. And he's using the negativity and turning around and using it for positive. So what I'm hoping happens from David Grusch is that he can help other veterans after this. Like, he can say, this has happened to me. Everyone knows about it, and I'm moving forward with my life, and I can help you do the same. That would be in my in my world, the perfect scenario to come out of this. Not only is he helping move the conversation forward on UFOs, but he is definitely has the ability to now be an advocate for mental health within the veteran community.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's an awesome thought. You know, the now let's go to the other side of the other side of all this, because I consider myself a very objective person, sometimes too objective, and this is where I get myself in trouble. I actually know some of these guys, right? I mean, I know some people who are in the intelligence community, and they're sneaky, they're pesky people. I mean, they're just there. That's what they do, you know. And you know, it was awesome getting to talk to Lou, you know, and not a lot off the air, but you know, little, you know, and you can kind of get a feel from him and all the other people I know. These guys are trained to do intelligence work, you know, either you can call it counterintelligence or whatever you want to call it. I just call it straight intelligence work, because to me, when you know, counterintelligence is something you exercise on the enemy, right? There may
Trying
be
to figure out what they know about you is my
yeah, or you may
interpretation.
be
What
trying to start a rebellion. You know, you may be trying to raise a small army to create, you know, to create a coup in some country or whatever. I mean, it happens all the time, right? The CIA is notorious for this stuff. I mean, so you know, I have to keep the thought open that Grush is doing a job. You know, that he's got a task he's out there doing, which is okay. I've said this before. It's I think he's whatever he's doing. There must be a reason behind it, right? There must be a reason that all this is happening. We're having these hearings. We've got all these high level people involved. You know, there has to be a reason. They're not doing this for fun. You know, for kicks. So uh, and somebody might say, well, what does that mean? I don't know what it means. I'm trying to figure it out, you know. But it may be that he has been asked. And one of my questions to Tim Burchett on the 28th is going to be about. I hope he doesn't watch. He's not going to watch this because I don't want to give him a heads up. Is you know what? How did he get involved? Was he approached by the intelligence community? You know, because it seems kind of out of left field that a guy, you know, I don't mean to say from Tennessee, because I'm from Tennessee. We're from Tennessee.
Yeah,
But it just seems odd that to me that he would, you know what I mean? Does it not seem odd at all that it's Tim Burchett, and maybe it's just because he is so close to us that it seems odd that how did he get so involved, and all of a sudden he's heading the committee, or he's, you know, heading the hearing, he's responsible. Did someone approach him? uh
I I think I might be able to add a little bit of context to
okay,
that.
great, because I don't know,
Um,
you know.
I think that the first thing was that TMZ approached him one day on Capitol Hill, and he just kind of started speaking about UFOs. And then after that, I wrote him a handwritten letter, included a picture of me and my family, and said, "Hey, man, I appreciate you having this discussion publicly. This is something that I'm passionate about, and here's what I do. This is the channel that I run, looking for more information on this." He actually called me and talked to me one Friday night while I was sitting on my back porch, and just had a conversation with me. And after that, I ended up getting approached by Lou Jimenez, and was able to kind of connect the two. And he got onto the Big Phone Home 2, and that was the first time that he had ever actually actively engaged with the Twitterverse UFO community. And so that, I think that was probably one of the things that kind of got him ingrained in the community. But I think he's had a lifelong interest in this topic, but it's just kind of now been boiling to the surface because the opportunity has presented itself.
Hmm, that's awesome information. Now I know not to ask him. Because it's kind of a pointed question
I'll
in a
also
way.
tell you this. I'll also tell you this, which I think is interesting. He ended up reaching back out to me and asked if I could get him in contact with Elizondo, and so I was able to make that connection for those two. So I assumed that they communicated after that, because things have only increased since then.
Hmm. Um, Okay, I want to talk to you off the air about all the. I hate to do this. I'm not trying to be rude to the audience. I just don't know whether I should. I want to invite you to our our interview, but I don't know if I should do it open, on the air or not. So that's all I'm talking about. I'm not trying to. I don't mean to tease the audience. I hate that when somebody says, "Oh, I have information, but I can't share it with you."
That's a core secret.
Yeah, that's a core secret. No, it sounds like but you didn't you serve? You served in the. Weren't you in the military also?
No, I worked at an Air Force base in
Oh, that's what.
Tennessee for 7 years, but I was a civilian contractor working on the maintenance and reliability side of the
Was
house.
that Arnold's?
Correct. Arnold
Yeah,
Air Force
I know
Base.
some engineers that there who do they anyway. Long story. I've known it for almost 20 years. Oliver Rhodes and Associates. I think I mentioned this before. Dean
Ah,
Oliver,
I can't
Barry
say that
Rhodes.
jumps out to me.
They've done some classified work, and it's interesting. I've been trying to get them on, but they don't seem to be all that interested yet in the genre.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
what I find interesting about the Air Force Base is there is more or less an engineer exchange program between Arnold Air Force Base and Redstone Arsenal. A lot of the engineers go down there, and a lot of them come back from Redstone to Arnold. I was almost on board to go down to Redstone as part of my career, but it didn't pan out. But that of course is like turning into the mecca of ufology at this point, as far as the professionalization of it.
yeah, I mean, Huntsville's big too, right? These guys, these engineers
Correct.
that I know that are have their own firm. They started their own firm now in Tullahoma, and they started out doing work with NASA in Huntsville, and then they started their own firm and moved to Tullahoma. And I mean, it's funny because I guess that's why I'm so suspicious all the time, because I get these little stories every now and then of all of these projects that we don't know about that are real. And so, you just wonder sometimes if maybe there's a combination of things going on. Maybe there is a phenomenon, but maybe there at the same time the intelligence community is trying to run some. I don't know. I don't want to say the words. You know what I mean? I just think the story is always more complicated than we think it's going to be. The answer is always going to be more complicated than just, yeah, there's aliens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I never want to downplay human ingenuity and the ability for us to advance in secret. That I think there's lots of stuff out there that would be mind blowing for us to know. How um, what's the word I'm looking for? How ready for deployment that technology is a big question I have. But as working at an Air Force base that was in the test and development business, it's shocking to me that we would be spending as much money on testing just like the next version of traditional propulsion systems and things like that. Not just testing, like the expense associated with creating those prototypes, but the expenses associated with the infrastructure that surrounds making that test cell be able to support the test that prototype needs to be in. It's just an enormous amount of money. It's absolutely
Yeah.
astronomical to just keep these bases up and running for the next generation of traditional aero propulsion systems.
That's why these black budgets are so secret, I guess. Really. Uh,
Well, that was one of the big
you know,
things I think came out of the hearing was that IRAD, the Independent Research and Development uh, scheme, I'll call it, that apparently contractors can run to skim money off the top and run their own experiments outside of the purview of the government.
but is it a scheme or something that our branches of the military encourage? I mean,
I'll
don't we want future weapons to be? Don't we want to be the ones developing these future weapons, or do we just want
so
China and Russia to be doing it?
people might not like this, but I'm going to refer to Donald Trump on this one, where he was being accused of not paying taxes, and he said, "I'm playing by the rules you set, and I'm not paying taxes because of it, because you made these deals for your other folks."
Yeah.
I feel like the same way. If we've got this system in place, this IRAD system in place, and it works that way, and they're using it as lawfully entitled to, I can't fault them too bad. But I wish that we would be able to have some transparency at some level with what they're doing, what they're developing.
Right. Even if we couldn't see the craft, if we could just say it would give me hope just to know that they're. I mean, I kind of know they're doing it, but it would give other people hope that that we're going to be. I mean, people just have to realize that in order to have to have happy lives and secure lives, and honestly be able to build some sort of wealth, you have to have security, right? And your country, a country has to stay ahead of the times. You can't lag when it comes to technology. You can't. Look what's happened with China, the chip shortage and all this stuff. You can't lag behind on technology. And so it doesn't bother me one bit. I really I'm surprised at some people who have this sort of righteous indignation going on. Oh, I can't believe we're building, future space weapons, or whatever. I got so excited with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was the first president I voted for. I had just turned 18, uh, went down and registered and went to vote. It was so awesome to hear him talk about Star Wars. Of course, it
Yeah.
turned out not to necessarily be true. It, maybe it wasn't true. Maybe it was. You know, um, that was exciting to me. I wasn't crying about my tax dollars going towards something like that. I mean, I would like to see homeless people helped, and hungry people helped, and I think we can do both. I think we can do all of it if we
Yeah.
just if we cut out waste. We can do whatever we want to do.
So you mentioned the Star Wars initiative, and that's one thing that I always keep in the back of my mind when I'm thinking about Lou Elizondo and all these other people that are involved with it, is maybe it is a play for additional funding for Space Force. That's kind of where my brain goes when I say, like, hey, if this isn't legitimate, if this isn't actually unfolding as a non-human intelligence interacting with humanity at this moment, and it is a psyop of some sort, what would the benefit of it be? And that's where my crosshairs go, is additional funding for Space Force, based on basically what Ronald Reagan started back in the 80s. So we need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our satellites. We need to do an expansion and dominate that space domain before anyone else does.
And again, why do I not have a problem with? Well, okay, so I was talking about this last night with Alexei. Also, how he was asking me. He thinks I'm some old man, I guess. I guess I am. I turned 60 in October. I've seen these phases where, we like when I was a teenager, you know, it was Jimmy Carter talking about his experiences or whatever. There was excitement around that. Then, a few years later, there's more excitement, and then it goes to sleep. Then a few years later, 10 years later, you have something happen, and then it goes back to sleep. Maybe these are periods where, you have a new batch of leadership or a new batch of people, and they're saying, "Hey, we're looking out for the future. We do need to raise more money," and I don't know if that's moral or not. I guess it's not moral into scaring people into, but we don't really, the American public doesn't really get a choice as to where the money comes from, or right, because if it's a black budget, it's not like they need to make the American population happy to get the money. They just skim it, right? They get it however they normally get it, right?
Well,
So
like was discussed in the hearing, there's a huge amount of money that goes that they can't account for when they do the audits. They failed the audit
right,
every single time. They don't know where it goes. So it's there for them. And I'll contradict myself by saying I think that the UFO phenomenon is the most ridiculous way to get more funding for the Space Force when they could
Yeah.
just step forward and say, hey, China is going to eat our lunch. Hey, Russia is going to take our satellites down. That would immediately have more validity to the claim, more
Yeah.
fear associated with it than UFOs. But
As I was
it could be.
talking, that was the thought that was going through my head. Why can't you just come up with a better reason? You know, that the American people would go for. Because honestly, 60%, or what percentage are we at now? Where people, if you're just walking down the street, if you said, "Do you know what a UAP is?" They would not. I have. You know what I mean? There's still that percentage of people who have no clue, or or don't want to know, or don't
Yeah.
want to have a clue. Um, so it's interesting. Uh, I guess I guess I guess if you're like me and you know enough of these sneaky intelligence type people, you you have some sort of reason to be suspicious and not necessarily skeptical, but objective. Um, but maybe I'm just making too many assumptions. You know.
Well, I feel like that you can go back to Ronald Reagan and quote him again and say, you can listen to these guys, trust but verify. Like anything they say, you can trust it, but you need to verify it before you really bite the hook.
I thought you were going to talk about the UN speech where he was talking about if we had, if we were to have some alien, invasion or whatever, what would we do as human, as humans or whatever that, I can't remember the exact words, but it was an interesting analogy, I think, and I think some people say that it was more pointed or more fact, that there was more behind it than just some analogy. And of course, I don't know. I never really had an opinion on that one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
I,
I will say that I feel like what's happening with their Congress right now, he kind of predicted when he said that, because this is the only, to my knowledge, bipartisan issue that has continued to be bipartisan throughout the course of from 2017 to now.
that is amazing. This is the first time, and I've been interested in politics practically since I was 12 or 13 years old. When I first had my little experience, for some reason, it led me to become interested not only in the phenomenon but politics. I think it was because I was curious to see how government would handle it, and uh, but wow, I just lost that train of thought. I went
Well,
off.
I got interested in politics for a stretch until I noticed that it starts to repeat and rhyme a lot, and it all depends on who's in the Oval Office, and it's the same client. It's just it's in syndication more or less. Once one party's in there, they make all the same claims that they were pushing against when their guy was in there, and it just goes back and forth and back and forth. So at some point, it started being futile, in my opinion, to stay up to date with every little nuance of what was going on, and I got frustrated. So that's when I kind of started tuning out of the politics.
Oh, that's what you made me realize what the point I was trying to make. I think.
All right, I think you've locked up on me. Have I locked up on? There you go. You're moving again.
Oh, sorry. Well, that was scary. No, what I was going for earlier was, yeah, because of my long interest in politics, I have noticed that this issue, that the committee, that hearing, seems to be the most nonpartisan thing I've ever seen happen in D.C. I've never seen a congressional hearing with that much cooperation involved, which kind of makes you wonder if there's some kind of big picture that they know about that we don't, that they're just like, hey, we can't. This is one of those things we have to deal with somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you
Well,
keep hearing these. If you spend just a little time on the internet, you keep hearing about these dates. Oh, we have a few years or something. Something's going to happen. Something's, you know what I mean? It's going to happen. Something's coming. And so,
those things frustrate me. I mean, they're entertainment at this point, but until it happens, it doesn't really carry a lot of weight with me. because those things have come and gone in the past, but there's just more people making claims that have, and I don't want to say that are more credible, that make it seem more of a something we should pay attention to. It's just hard for me to believe that anybody can predict the future to the extent that some of these claims are being made.
Yeah, especially when it comes to something like, if the phenomenon exists, there's certainly no way to predict that, I don't think. I think what made me think about it more was the fact that we had so much cooperation between political parties. That was kind of that's the only thing that really made me think about it. Give it a second thought, because again, in my 45 years of being interested in politics, I've never seen any subject that has seen the cooperation that we're seeing here. And it could be that it's just timing. We're coming up on an election year, and maybe these politicians think that it's a hot button issue that they should be jumping on the bandwagon for. I don't think Tim Burchett is that way. I think he's sincere. But
yeah. Well, the two of the main senators involved also ran for president, Kirsten Gillibrand and Marco Rubio, Republican and Democrat that ran for president. I do feel like this next election cycle, the questions are going to come up at some point in the debates that say, hey, what's your stance on UAPs? Remember those balloons that flew over that we shot down? What do you know about those? How should we have responded differently?
I do tend to, sorry to change the subject a little bit, but I didn't want to forget about this question I have for you.
And I'm either freezing up or you, or I'm not sure which.
Are you there? Are you with me, Dan?
Maybe we can edit this part out.
Yeah. Are you there?
I can hear you a little bit.
Huh. I haven't had this trouble in a while. Yeah,
it's my Wi-Fi. It's like.
Let me know when you think you're back. In the meantime, I'll answer.
All right, is that any better?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. My Wi-Fi cut out on me for some reason. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was gonna answer this kind of, I think, a silly question. And this is honestly the kind of stuff I don't like stooping to a certain degree, talking about, these little wars you have on UFO Twitter going on between these certain parties. But to answer this guy's question, I think Lou is probably his with his history and his background, you're not gonna shake him. You're not gonna say anything to Lou that kind of, if there's any person that can maintain his composure, it's going to be Lou Elizondo. So the question was, why does Lou follow KMF? I think that's I don't know if you know who that is, but
yeah.
But
I had to unfollow him.
Yeah, and so I think to answer the question is just to give Lou a little credit here, is that he doesn't get frazzled by any of that at all to any extent. Sorry, I was going to answer that question because I didn't know how long it was going to take you to come back.
No worries.
What were we talking about right before you left? Oh, I was going to ask you about. You see, I still think, for example, I think the Tic Tacs could be either a training method, or it could be the phenomenon, right? I don't see, and people have heard me say that before, and they're like, I can't believe you think the government would experiment on our. No, they're not experimenting. They're training. They could be training, right? And I posted a picture, the little snippet of the video where we had our troops coming out of trenches walking towards the nuclear, after a nuclear test, and there's the mushroom cloud, and they're walking towards the mushroom cloud. So, yeah, our government would do something like that. But I don't think my next point was that I don't think there's ever been a military plane brought down by any of these Tic Tacs, right? Not that it's been
Uh,
publicized.
not by Tic Tacs, to my knowledge. The Frederick Vonage, I'm losing the term. I think he chased one, and his plane basically ended up stalling out, and he ended up crashing because of it. But one of the things that was said back in the 40s is these UFOs are elusive by nature. So I feel like whatever it is, they don't want to actively engage in conflict with us, even though they could dominate us. I don't think that's their MO. I don't think they have. I think they're more neutral to us.
Well, and the only reason I brought that up was because I interviewed a couple of years ago. I interviewed a guy who he basically, it sounds like he might have been doing similar work to what you were doing, was he was a high tech maintenance guy on for at a military base and also for SpaceX, right? And he was stationed down in, I think it was Puerto Rico, maybe. Oh no, it was an island near. It was near Puerto Rico, and he claims that he saw a Tic Tac with it looked like a human, like a person operating it. It had a viewing window, and they were dressed in like an Air Force uniform, similar to that. You know, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying he that was his experience, just like everyone else's experiences that they
Yeah.
tell me about that I don't know are true or not, right? I mean, do we give all stories that we don't know equal weight, or in this case, I've gotten to know this guy. I know him on Facebook now. He seems to be an honest person. He has a family. He's just like you. I mean, I trust you just as much as I trust anyone. I mean, I trust you more than I just trust anybody. And you see, so if you had told me that story, I would believe it, you know. And so
Yeah.
I'm almost to that point with him where I'm believing it. So the only reason I asked the training question was because I don't think it would be too unethical for our military to have technology that it trained our pilots with, as long as there were no safety issues, right?
So I'll push back on that a little, in just a little
Good.
bit,
I'm
and
glad.
ask you, do you think that they would, if that was a training exercise, they would have only done it to one crew one time in the history of the Navy aviation, or do you think they would have said, all right, now we're going to try this over the Atlantic and see how these crews respond to
I,
these Tic
I thought
Tacs instead
I
of it just
thought
being a one-off?
I thought our crews were seeing these every. I mean, I've heard people say we see them all the time.
That is in particular, what I think you're talking about is the metallic spheres that Kirkpatrick said have been
Okay.
witnessed where any naval operations are occurring around the globe. That's my interpretation of what is being seen. Is that in that big graph that he put forward, I think he said the highest percentage of objects that are being seen are metallic orbs that are, I think, I want to say 3 feet to 3 meters. I can't remember the exact dimensions, but it's the two videos that he's shown, that look like the Mazel orb. Those are, in my opinion, what he's talking about, where they're just kind of like this sphere that's zipping along and no one knows what it is, but not the Tic Tacs, is my understanding.
Okay. I've seen so many interviews where people will just in passing saying, "Oh, we see these on a regular basis," and they don't say these Tic Tacs or these orbs, or they don't, or these transparent spheres with cubes in them. They don't really
Mm-hmm.
describe. Sometimes people are just sort of, I don't know, what would you say, colloquially speaking about those things, and so it's not real
And
clear.
And being a UFO nerd like you and I are, it is just hard to watch those news segments where they call the gimbal video the Tic Tac and all these other
Oh
things
yeah,
that are just like these
yeah.
nuanced details that people miss. And I can't blame them, but it is tough to watch some of that stuff.
Well, what do you what was I going to? I had a couple of questions I was going to ask you about. Do you have anything to share about your trip that impressed you, or any kind of information that you think that you learned while you were there that we didn't hear in the news, or whatever?
I guess it's just the overall sense of excitement that this hearing brought that the other one before it didn't have. That's what I'm thinking is going to end up happening. The cool thing that I saw while I was waiting in line, hoping to get into this thing, is that people that were working in the building, like security guards, custodians, were coming to check out the line. Like they would come around the corner and see the line stretch down the hallway. And I saw one security lady like put her hand over her mouth and just have it wide open. So to me, that was kind of something that you didn't get to see if you weren't there, was the number of people. And I even stopped some of them. I was like, you have got the look of surprise on your face. Why do you feel that way right now? And they would be like, because this is not normal. These hearings are usually not attended, and this is different. So that's one thing that I think is changing. The passion associated with this community is starting to really be shown at these things. And so my hope for the next one is it'll be even more people, to where we'll have a groundswell of grassroots efforts converging on these things, and it'll really start getting the attention of the press and the media. There was so much more press there this time than the preceding time. I'll tell you, like, it is kind of humorous watching people walk down, because the line was so long. We were all there so early, but then people start trickling in that were going into it, including Ryan Graves, David Fravor, and you would just see like this glow of Hollywood lighting and guys with cameras on their shoulders walking down backwards in front of them, and it was just like this aura of excitement that came down the hallway, and everybody in line was getting excited. But when Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp came down, that was probably the most excited I saw people doing. Everybody was hooting and hollering. I got to shake their hands and meet them in person for the first time, and got to introduce my daughter to them, which I thought was a pretty cool moment for them, because I do hope this turns out to be something that is a non-human intelligence, that these moments like this I can share with my family, so that I'm they might not know the weight of what's going on right now or the significance of it, but in the future they'll be able to look back and say, yeah, that was something that was pretty cool. Speaking of which, my daughter came home from school this week and said that that my 13-year-old, she said they were at lunch having a conversation, and they usually like try to each bring up something different. And one of the daughters, or one of the other girls, brought up, hey, have you guys heard about the UFO stuff that was going on in Congress? And so that happened at my daughter's lunch table at a middle school. So she was able to be like, yeah, my dad's a UFO nerd. He makes these videos. And so she looked me up and everything. So now she follows me on TikTok. But I thought that was a big win, because now my daughter knows, like, well, it's not just her dad that talks about this. It's other families do as well.
I think I ran off my first wife with this mess. Um, that seems
I
like
can
a
see
bad
that happening.
that seems like a bad thing to say, but I remember when my youngest son was young, and I kept thinking, okay, I don't want to give him nightmares, so I'm not going to talk about it. You know what I mean? I don't, as a parent, you don't want your kids like worrying about what's in the closet, and that's why I don't think we should start any sort of education efforts until we know for sure, and then we understand how to approach it. Right? That's just a personal thing. Being a dad of three kids, that's just coming from that. But it's kind of funny. Just recently, where I used to ask my kids when they were in school, "Hey, what are you guys talking about? What do you guys say about this kind of stuff?" And they would kind of blow it off before, because their mothers weren't. My two wives, weren't really happy with the idea of talking about it with uh, so I have two older children. Barrett and Allie are from my first wife, and I have Alex from my second wife. Neither wife really wanted it to be a subject talked about with the kids, but I was really happy just recently in the past months where they're coming to me now asking me questions, which means that it's out there in their circles, which I was kind of happy to see that, because I'm sure they thought, crazy old dad. Years ago it was probably crazy old dad, and I'm kind of hoping now that it's becoming less of a taboo subject for even in their circles. Um, I don't know. You talking about your daughter made me think of that. I don't.
Yeah.
Um, how does your wife react to?
She's indifferent to it. Like I've told people she has opted out of the nightly updates on UFO news in our kitchen. She doesn't particularly care for it. She is more of a she loves her local community. And
Yeah,
meanwhile I'm staring out into the universe, trying to figure out what's going on out there. She likes the human to human interaction that a close community provides. So unless it pays rent, then she's not too terribly interested about it. But like for my kids, I don't want to overwhelm them with any information. So
yeah,
I kind of let them know that I'm interested in it, and I'm happy to engage with any conversation that they bring to me, but I'm not like actively trying to keep them updated. They don't particularly care either. They've got their lives going on in middle school they're more worried about. But I also, on the other side of the coin, don't want them to be completely shocked if something was to come out that would
right.
be revolutionary. I don't want it to be like they didn't see it coming. I didn't do my part as a father to not inform them that this was a possibility, if something came out, and everyone else is freaking out. But I feel like I've done enough conversations or had enough conversations with them, informed them of enough to where if something did come out, they wouldn't exactly panic. Like I feel like some people would be prone to doing. I think my kids would be like, "Oh yeah, that's just like what my dad has been telling me for
My
years.
crazy dad
No
told me
big
so.
deal." Yeah.
Yeah, I've always walked that sort of tightrope where I didn't want to alarm them, and that's what moms are good at, right? Moms are very pragmatic. They're worried about security for their kids, right? They're worried about keeping them safe and their psychological well being, right? And I understand that. It's kind of funny how the different roles are played out in that manner. But it was leading me to a question that I tend to go down these rabbit holes in my mind. That's why I'm not a very good host, because I get lost in
Well,
thoughts.
while you're lost in thought, I want to continue this discussion about the difference between fathers and mothers, because I
Oh,
had a
good.
conversation with my daughter just a few days ago, and I was like, I think that the dads are the preferred parent of children until the rough housing era is done, and then they start to like their mom more. Like as soon as we're done tickling and rough housing with those kids, they definitely we lose a little bit of the favor.
Yeah, I mean, I used to tuck my kids in at night, but they always loved it when mom did it,
Hmm.
and that seems to be they know mom's going to make sure they're safe, and maybe moms just have to keep that role going, where they can't just go off on every little tangent that we want to go off on, just out of excitement, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm still leaving the door open. I'm leaving both doors open that um, it's true, and because I do think there is life out there. I'm a Christian, so I think that God probably was capable of creating other life forms in the universe, and I'm not offended by that. And there could be life forms that are more advanced, because Earth is a late bloomer, right? We were as a planet, it's a late bloomer, so there could be civilizations millions of years older than ours, right? Um, so I don't have any problems with uh, the idea. I also don't have any problems with the idea that you know our military needs to tell a few fibs to get things done. If it means securing our country, I think it for me it all always goes back to you know is what is the ultimate what is the end game? What is the ultimate goal of that operation or whatever you want to call it? That plan is the plan to secure our country and to make sure it stays safe. That to me is an admirable goal, and it's it's not that I expect to be played upon, but if it turns out in the end, I'm just not going to be very upset about it. You know what I mean? If
If it
somehow
was
we
for the
were able,
greater good.
yeah. I mean, I do think that Ronald Reagan helped bankrupt the U.S., the Soviet Union, and I'll always think that. A lot of people debate that. Um, and I think, there was probably a lot of psyoping going on back during the Cold War, right? That was I mean, that's probably where our intelligence agencies honed their skills, you know. So again, I'm not going to get upset at either option. That's what I'm saying. So I think some people take that as skepticism. I don't think it is. I think it's just a healthy mindset. You don't get too engrossed in either side. I
Well,
think.
I believe what you're basically saying is in line with my perspective because I just want to know the truth. Whatever that truth is what I'm interested in finding out about. It sounds like it's great if it would be a non-human intelligence, but it sounds equally as amazing if it's us being able to perform these feats that people are reporting, and it's just our technology is advancing in the shadows and we're just now learning about it and catching up. Either of those is interesting to me, but there's only one truth, I guess, and that's what I want to know is what's the truth.
It it could be, and see that's where I'm a little different. I think that first of all, we'll never know the truth, right? I don't think this goes into deep philosophy for me, and it's really kind of boring for other people to hear, I guess. But I don't think that I don't think our Creator gave us the ability to know the truth, um, the truth, and I think there's in our mind there are in so that I guess what I'm saying is that leaves the door open for multiple truths. you know, there could be there could be ET, and there could be the tech wars going on at the same time, right? Our universe is a very dynamic place, and maybe they are playing off of each other. You know, um, does that make sense? Does that? Uh,
Yeah, I think you're correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're saying like they could overlap each other. Like it
yeah, they
could
can
be
overlap.
both.
Yeah, I think life is so complex and so diverse that everything can be true at the same time in different places. Let me look at my questions here right quick. Ross Coulthart was talking about one thing that surprised me. I wanted to get your take on this because you're probably more familiar with the security issues as far as clearances and what's classified and all that than I am. He made a comment in one of his interviews that the information on the phones was not classified. That the pilots where they had taken video with their iPhones, and I disagreed with that. In that, if you're in the theater of operations, you can't just take your phone and you know video the location of your own troops or even the enemy troops and then leak it. That is classified information. So I don't know what he was talking about there. What do you think about that? I mean, I obviously think that any information gained while a pilot is flying is has to be reviewed or has to be approved before it is
I,
released.
I would almost think he's referring more to the platform itself. Like it's not our forward-looking infrared technology that the military is incorporated into the weapons platform that we're viewing. Like the we don't want the enemy to know how good our collection systems are, our video systems are. But I think what he was saying is like it's a consumer grade video. But like you said, I think it goes into the gray because it's also saying, well, that also provides a time and more or less a location of where this particular pilot was flying. So I feel like that's in the gray type of a item. I could see it going either way, but it's the guy's personal information. But if it's of something that he shouldn't be taking, if he's not allowed to videotape in the cockpit, then it's not something that can be released, in my opinion. So I don't know if it's 100% accurate.
I would be flabbergasted if the Air Force didn't, or Navy didn't have a policy about information gained in the cockpit by a pilot. To me, that information is owned by that military service. That right? I mean,
yeah, I would think so.
I mean,
it's hard for me to believe too.
I mean, I would think that our military would want that ability to be able to say, I mean, because, I mean, you're going to get into situations like with the other real whistleblowers where they were leaking information about, you know what I mean? That to me, I mean, that would actually be more of a whistleblower activity to me than even what Grusch has done, right?
I can't say I'm particularly familiar with the whistleblowers you're referring to.
I'm saying that I'm having a hard time. Well, I'm not really saying it very well. I'm having a hard time applying the whistleblower law to Grusch because he's testifying to secondhand information. He's whistleblowing for the whistleblower, and so that's not really related to the issue of, you know, video taken from the cockpit. But I was trying to relate it to the fact that the person taking the video, it doesn't matter what type of equipment you use. It's the fact that you've gained information that could, you know, possibly compromise military, information, whether it be.
He was on the clock. He took the video was taken on the clock, regardless of what platform it's. I mean, it's still on the clock.
Just about every corporation in this country has, you know, policies for this stuff. I worked at an architecture firm. When I became an associate, I had to sign an NDA that said that it was 5 pages long of what I could and couldn't do. And I just can't believe, and it was all based around design, you know, it was all based around intellectual property, obviously, and how I handled documents, you know. You can't, and that was an architecture firm. You know, the military has policies, and that's why I think that some of the information that's been leaked has been given the approval by the Navy or the Air Force or the Pentagon, whoever, right? I'm not so sure that what we are calling leaks are necessarily leaks. That they're purposely leaked, or they've got the approval, right? So, I mean, were all of the orbs, what are we calling it, like the Go Fast in the gimbal videos? I forgot exactly how they were leaked. Were they leaked with the blessing of the military?
I feel like that was clear, and then it got fuzzy. So I don't feel like I have a full grasp on how they became publicly available anymore. That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. I don't think Fravor or Graves would have been able to be doing what they're doing without the blessing from the intelligence community or the Pentagon or whoever, the Air Force intelligence or Navy, whatever. Right. So that's where I kind of get in trouble for my little skeptical or people say, oh, your objectivity goes too far. It goes into that realm of conspiracy theory. I'm like, no, it's just an option to me.
Yeah.
You know? I'm not going to be surprised if it comes to that. So, man, I had all these questions I wanted to ask you, but I have basically, because of the time screw up, my brain has been. How did you? Okay, did you see Susan Ghost spokesman there on a statement? What's the definition of? Oh, I was wanting to talk about what your definition of whistleblower is, but we've already talked about that. Do you have anything else that that you are working on, or that you any top secret information you can share with us?
I'm not as connected as people seem to think I am, to be honest with you. Like I have I, I DM people every now and then, but anything that anyone tells me, once again, this goes back to predictions. I don't know what to do with the information that I can't verify myself. So yeah, I don't have any secret information that's leading me to do something going forward, but I'm just going to continue to cover what's going on and try to provide context around it and try to decipher the BS from the truth. So join me for the
Well,
ride if you want to hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok.
well, I think you do as good a job as anybody at bringing information um, to the group, to people who are interested, and it's pretty awesome. Um, I'm proud of the fact that you're from Tennessee. I don't know why. I just think that's cool. I think it's cool that Burchett is. It's kind of funny how Tennesseans tend to be sort of pragmatic and not skeptical, but objective people. They're open minded. We're not like hillbillies, like people. I may talk like a hillbilly, but we're not hillbillies. I don't think. You know.
I'll confess, I moved from Atlanta to Tennessee when I was 15, and I exactly had that stereotype of people from Tennessee when I first moved up there. I was like, "You're moving me to a place like that? Oh my goodness, mom and dad." But yeah, now everyone else in the world in California is moving to Tennessee.
Well, and that whole little people don't. I don't think people really understand what goes on in Middle Tennessee as far as technology and intelligence work and all that. It's like a little. It's kind of like an arm of Oak Ridge or something. I think if we really knew the hubs, the connections between Huntsville, Middle Tennessee, and Oak Ridge, I think that there may be there may be underground tunnels going between. There's your conspiracy theory.
Well,
But
I'll confess to another connection that people don't know about Tennessee is we have Arnold Air Force Base. There is a satellite campus of the UT system just off of the property, and that's where a lot of people get their master's degrees, including myself, from the University of Tennessee Space Institute at Tullahoma. So I got a master's degree from the Space Institute. But yeah, a lot of people from Redstone are also associated with that program. Oak Ridge, of course, is not too far down the road from there. So it is an interesting place. But the thing that I think is the most valuable long-term benefit to Tennessee right now is what Governor Lee is doing with providing additional income funding to the TCAT schools, the Tennessee Career. Now I'm blanking on the acronym. The skilled trades
the
schools that we have
STEM,
around.
yeah,
Yeah,
in the STEM stuff too.
not engineering, but just like practical, like plumbers,
Right.
electricians, HVAC technicians, things like that. We're producing a workforce for the future to maintain the investments that we're making today. There's not a lot of other places around the country that are emphasizing that skill set, that we do need everybody. We need plumbers to keep the water flowing, electricians to keep the lights on. So that's where I think Tennessee is setting itself up for a big win in 10, 20 years, because we are filling a void that is becoming increasingly obvious as the retirement age and attrition is hitting us right now in the skilled trades world. It's just so hard to find good plumbers, electricians
Yeah.
at the moment, and it's only going to get harder. And so these jobs are going to become more and more valuable as time goes on.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, when I got my first Tonka truck and Lincoln log set, I was like, I'm going to be a builder. That's exactly what I'm going to be. And when I went to high school, we had there was a building trade school, right? I was the last generation of student that went to this one building trade school. It's called Sequoia Vocational Technical Center, and I went to high school half a day, and I went to this school, building trade school, a half a day. And they took us like 5 students from surrounding schools, so they had to draw straws. 50 kids were there in my school wanting to get in. My straw got drawn, And I was like, dude, this is it, and that put me so far ahead. Now,
Yeah.
some people would say you should have gone to college, and I wish I had gone. But when I left, we built two houses in that period, that 2 year period that I went. When I left, I started a framing crew. So I went directly into into business at 18 years old with a framing crew. And I know people are going to say big deal, but that's the kind of thing. Like I said, that I was the last. That school turned into, they converted it to a normal. That was the year 1980. Seemed like that I graduated. Seemed like the year that the vocational school started going away. Right. That if you go look at that school now, it's just a normal high school. And
Yeah.
why did they convert it? Why was it converted? Why did we get away from teaching people? Um, I have children. They all have different skill sets. They're musicians. Alex is practically a mathematician. But they all have different skill sets, and they can't all do the same things. And it was I write about this in my book. That's going to be coming out in December. The Artisan Philosophy, and it deals directly with what you're talking about, and I'm excited about that too. I just didn't think people would be. I was afraid to bring it up because uh, people seem to be bored with that issue, but I don't think people understand how important it is for a certain percentage of our population to learn a skill set.
Oh, but it's more than that. Like that's
Yeah,
what I don't think people realize. It's every college educated business major that needs someone to keep their house from falling
yeah,
apart relies on the back of these people that are willing to perform this work. Like it affects the entire country. If we lose that workforce, we're gonna lose all across the board. I don't think people realize that. Mike Rowe with Dirty Jobs is the biggest leading advocate for that type of training and education to be pushed throughout our country. I feel like we kind of shifted the goalposts and said everybody needs a college degree, everybody needs to work in an office, and that has left a gap that is going to hurt us in the future. So we're just now figuring that out and trying to put a band-aid on it and then eventually solve it by providing a larger educational system to get these people trained in with the skills they need.
and I think we're teaching kids that it's either now or never when it's not. Right. I took the path I took was the path that I loved and I wanted to take. But guess what? That was 40 something years ago, you know. And that meant that I have all this spare time in the evenings now. I just finished a class. Harvard X has online. They had an architecture class online because I do design build work. That was a class I took, a Harvard level architecture class I took, and I obviously passed it. I have my little certificate. You can go on atjacking.com and see it. There are all kinds of educational opportunities for people to learn after you learn. If you go to a vocational school and you learn a trade and you get into that trade, you can work your way up to a point where you're a business owner. You're very successful. You can keep learning your entire life. This is why I teach my apprentices. You can, I help them learn the career path that they can take to both build a career in a trade, but at the same time keep that continuing education going. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
opportunities now online for decent education. We're not talking about, it used to be taboo to say you took an online class. Back when I first started doing it in the 90s, people were like, "Oh, internet college. We don't know about this." But now it's becoming a little more acceptable. But it's the idea that every child has to go to college straight out of high school. I would encourage it, but I'm saying, like I said, there needs to be a
Not
percentage of
everything's
kids.
for everybody.
Yeah, there needs to be a percentage of kids that are allowed and not chastised by their parents because their parents have gone to Princeton forever for 100 years. Every generation. That's kind of what happens. The prodigy syndrome is what I call it. Where you feel like you have to go. That happened to Alex, my younger son. Anyway, it's a long story, but he ended up going to a private college because of his mom, and he didn't like it. It wasn't for him. So now he's doing what he wants to be doing, and he's happy, and I'm happy for him. And so I think parents need to be just open. They need to pay attention to their kids. I'm preaching now, aren't I? Well, you got me off on a subject I'm kind of passionate about, because I've been in the industry my entire life, basically. And I don't know what happened, and I've dealt with, the immigrant, the guys who come over from Guatemala and Honduras, Central America, are great guys. They love their families. They're great workers, but they have a different culture than we do. They just, it's sad to see that the industry is not, it's changed so much that it's not, I don't know, it's just sad, and it's a long story, and I know I don't have time to, this is one thing I could talk about for a very long time, so I'll get to watch myself. I have to be careful.
Well, you did say ignoring your children. I feel like I'm starting to do that at this point on a Sunday afternoon. So
no, I
think it's time to.
I appreciate it, Dan. You gave me an hour and a half almost, and I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to catch up, and I was proud to see you go to DC and all the work that you're doing, and it's really awesome. And I think you're representing Tennessee well. I feel like
it's work, but it's fun. It is definitely enjoyable to get to do stuff like that, because it does feel like I'm engaging with history directly.
That's an awesome way to look at it. We don't want to be on the sidelines when history takes place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dan. Tell the family I said hi.
Definitely.
And the next time you're down this way, stop in, and I'd love to meet you in person. So
we'll do it. Hand me a hammer and I'll help you build something.
I'm getting ready to build my bigger tiny shack, and that's poured the slab for it. I'm getting ready, so that'll be awesome. Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care.
Maybe. See you.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
See you. All right. Anybody in the audience have any questions or comments? I apologize for the mix-up on the time. I had Dan Villers and Dan Warren scheduled, and I scheduled them both for 6 p.m. and that's why the original time was scheduled. Anyway, nobody probably even knows that I'm talking about for no reason. Kurt M says the sad part in my county is the difference between a good contractor and a bad contractor are their own mess. Yeah. It is, those are the people who, not like me, who looked at the construction industry as a career, and who, made put the time in and effort to get the proper training. And some people, honestly, and it's kind of sad. It's okay. I'm not going to say it's sad. Okay. Some people come into the construction industry, because it seems like just a big wash pit, or what would you call it? That where people who can't do anything else come, they come and do roofing or vinyl siding or whatever. I guess I should say, I mean, that's okay if these people are in need and they need a job. I can't fault them, but there are a good percentage of the people like me who looked at it as a career when they were very young and went through their apprenticeship, their journeyman, as a journeyman, and now I'm a master carpenter, and a business owner, and there's a career path that can be made. And it's just anyway, I don't want to preach too much. I do want to thank everybody who came, and I appreciate it. And on the 26th, we will have Dan Warren. Oh, I did want to mention, if you don't mind, right quick, let me just screen share. I do want to mention I have this new thing where if you go to the PiFiShow.com, okay, I've just started this, so don't judge it too much. You can go here. You can go to the show menu, and you can see the calendar. Okay, on the 26th, we've got Dan Villers at 8 p.m. And on the 28th, we have Tim Burchett. We have Tim Burchett coming. That'll be awesome. I hope he doesn't find a skiff. I hope he doesn't take a skiff instead of coming to the PiFi show. That's a worry I have at this point. But anyway, you can go here. The other thing is I have this most wanted list. And so I'm developing this most wanted list. I've actually talked to Brandon Fugel on, through DMs on Twitter, and I've starting to develop a little relationship on YouTube with Sabina Hassenfelder. She's awesome, and just love learning. And I want to invite as many of these smart people as I can. Hopefully, some of it will rub off on me, and that would be great. And of course, Brandon is an awesome guy, and it would be nice to have him. So this little wanted thing here is if someone has direct contact information, or if you have, if you know these people, then there's a reward out for the successful apprehension of these guests. It's just a fun little thing I'm trying to do. And then, of course, Bernardo Kastrup is coming in October back. I love this guy, man. He's just awesome. And so I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but I did want to show. I'm also going to be having some giveaways for questions. So on the show where Dan Villers is going to be here, come here, submit a question. You go to the show menu. You go to hot tips and questions. This is for if you have a question for a guest, you can say the guest name here. There's a little tooltip right here. You can give your question. You can also request a guest, and you can also submit information about a guest. Maybe you have an email, or how a contact person to get in touch with them. And if I use that information and I get that guest on the show, you will receive $100. That's right. This is not a symbolic wanted list. This is a wanted list that is going to offer a reward for your efforts. So anyway, thanks for putting up with that little advertisement about the new website. It's kind of bare right now. There's not much there. I admit it, but I'm working on it. I'm just one guy, a one-man show, trying to do what he loves doing. And this is one of the things I love doing, is interviewing people, smart people in the know, and people that can help, bring us new knowledge. I'm really interested in one of the things that's most interesting to me about Brandon is his collections. The things that he collects are really bizarre and exotic, and that's interesting to me. So anyway, let me go back here, and I want to thank you guys. Don't have a contact, but if you can interview Daniel, what? Let me get that. Let me stop screen sharing. What's his name? Let me stop screen sharing. There we go. What is his name? I see I can't copy and paste that. So that's why I have if you go to the PiFiShow.com, you can send that to me in an email. Daniel Schmachtenberger. What does he do, Kurt? Yum. But anyway, thanks everybody. I'm just going to play this little outro one more time, or the intro, for the sake of my son, who created the new music for the intro. So I thought it would be fun just to play it on the way out. And thanks everyone. I really appreciate it.